We've been talking about cars a lot recently, and so we're going to change it up, talking about airlines, since that seems to be what everyone's talking about right now. Southwest has grounded, I think now we're in day 5, and they've canceled over 3,000 flights. Uh, Now, they are officially maintaining still, as at least as of this recording, that it's weather related, which is strange because you'll notice Delta, American, United, they're not having these same problems in terms of the weather. So it's kind of strange, 3,000 flights canceled. And, that this would only affect Southwest and not the other companies. And now, this is particularly interesting because I was made aware of a particular law that comes to traveling companies in general, trains, airplanes. Basically, if they cancel for an uncontrollable weather-related event, they're not legally obligated to give you a refund. Now, you'll know many companies, obviously they don't want to screw their customers. They're going to have some kind of option, maybe give you a voucher or try and change your flight for you. But if that would be if it were a weather related event. Though apparently they're not technically obligated to honor that. Though I will say, I fly a lot for my work, and if you have your flight canceled due to weather with Delta, I knew it as a courtesy. I've since been made aware, apparently this is some kind of law, that if they try and reschedule, say my flight at 10 o'clock at night gets canceled, they say, oh, okay, well, we have one at 6 a.m. I, as the customer, have the right to say, well, why don't you check American? Why don't you check one of the other carriers, see if I can get home sooner? So that's kind of cool. I will keep that in mind in the future. So for this reason, Southwest is pretty strongly maintained that this is a weather-related event, because then they don't immediately have to start issuing refunds or trading you on to other carriers. Now, apparently, they've had some 40% of their air traffic controllers just call out sick since their vaccine mandate started. And apparently, some number of the pilots have done the same. And now it's interesting the way that this has been reported. If you go to a lot of mainstream right-wing sources, Fox News is basically the monolith that comes to mind. This is this is a fun talking point because they get to point out that the airline industry is being dishonest about why the people are canceling. And why is it that they feel they can be dishonest? I mean, certainly we have the internet, we have the hive mind of people that just need to know. They need to pull back the layers and discover every conspiracy. And if you look at a place like Fox News or like here, you're going to hear that the reason that this is not being reported honestly is because they don't want you to know that in reality, there's a lot of people that are not in favor of these vaccine mandates. And I mean a lot. Not to say that they're anti-vaccine. I mean, certainly some of the people are. Not that it's anybody's business. I got vaccinated months ago. That doesn't mean I'm in favor of a mandate. I don't think that your job should be allowed to make those decisions for you. And I mean, in effect, that is what they're doing. But I'll get back to that. If you go to a more mainstream left-wing source, CNN or MSNBC, you're going to see a lot more talk about the fact that Southwest, based out of Texas, and then nearby they have Florida, and a lot of flights that go in and out of Florida, and that this is actually a COVID-related issue, which is technically honest, it is a COVID-related issue. But it's not people getting on Southwest flights and spreading COVID. I mean, in the last 6 months, a year, have you personally, And I'm not asking you to go to Google, though. I mean, I would be curious what the results are. I'm saying, do you specifically remember seeing on the news or hearing somebody talk about a bunch of people specifically on a Southwest flight that was a super spreader event? And I'm going to come in before and say you can't talk about the Texas Democrat legislature that fled the state to Washington, D.C. to avoid voting in a totally illegal manner. Now, that wasn't Southwest. That was a private charter flight. But that's the only flight I can think of that was specifically labeled a super spreader event. I definitely don't remember one with Southwest. And I don't think you do either. And I mean, you want to contact me or comment and tell me that I'm wrong and show me the article from that time with the time and date stamp, then, I'll summarily eat my words. But then it comes to a matter of, do I believe that you remember that? Do you believe that you remember that? Or did you just Google it and find it? Because it is true, you can find anything on the internet. But no, I want to go back to what I was talking about before, about how there's a lot of people, a whole lot of people, that want to know what is going to happen with these vaccine mandates. Now, some people have been like anti-vaxxer, when I was in the 8th grade, and that term first started getting popular with people like Kat Von D, who didn't want to give their newborn child a regular battery of vaccines, to protect their offspring from things like measles, mumps, and rubella. Those other things. And I mean, like I said, it's not really my cup of tea, but I'm also not the kind of person who gets a flu shot every year either. But it used to be that didn't make me an anti-vaxxer. That just made me an idiot. No, anti-vaxxers were like this particular edgy group of, at the time, usually left-leaning people that just thought that these vaccines were filled with things like mercury, arsenic, blah, 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 and you shouldn't put that into a child. Also, whoever came up with the idea of calling a vaccine regimen a battery, battery can mean the thing that is powering your electric car. On the other hand, battery can be in the form of assault and. So, maybe verbiage is something that we should focus on, and certainly seems to be something that the left has figured out. But I digress from that point. If people that do not, and I mean are literally scared to get the vaccine because they have a condition that a vaccine could activate and be very harmful to them, or if they just don't want to get this vaccine because in the Pfizer and Moderna versions, it's relatively new technology, and this is the first time that it's, being offered to the public. I can think of a lot of actually reasonable reasons why someone would not want to get the vaccine, especially if they haven't taken the time to talk to their medical doctor about the benefits, the risks, and how that weighs in for them specifically with their own medical history. That being said, I am a person who is against mandates, laws generally. And I am curious to see what happens with Southwest. I mean, you can't not have employees and be in this kind of business. And this is going to answer a lot of questions for people if this experiment is allowed to continue long enough. And the second that you come out and say this is a group of workers striking against the vaccine, then it's official. We are in the test grounds. We get to see what happens. Now this only exists if it's acknowledged. So it exists for me because I see what's going on. It exists for virtually anybody who has accidentally skimmed past Fox News, be it in a hotel lobby or at your parents' house. I say that because I don't think that there's anybody in my age group who has cable. Why else would you listen to me talk on YouTube? Now, once we see what happens, Southwest collapses, just destroyed entirely. That's never going to happen. I'll come back as to why. Or the other alternative would be that they reverse their position, as companies oft do. Companies, governments, whatever. I mean, the Amish said, we're not paying taxes, we're not getting Social Security numbers. And the United States government was like, yeah, you're right. We never wanted your taxes anyway. I mean, there's been very unlikely, seemingly unlikely situations where groups of people looked at the government and said, no, we're not going to do that. And the government has kind of batted its eyes a couple times and looked at them and said, well, we didn't really want to do that anyway. It's funny you should say so. And this is one of those situations. Because if Southwest reverses their position, and it's been acknowledged by everyone that the vaccine mandates is what this is really about. My favorite phrase in the world, that's not what this is about. No. If they reverse their position and that's what the story is, there's lots of people that are going to be inspired not to go forward. Either, not to get vaccinated, or if they are vaccinated, to say, I don't really feel comfortable giving you my medical information. Which is really how I feel, honestly. Like I said, I'm vaccinated. I'm not worried about catching COVID. My understanding is if I catch it, because I have the vaccine, then it'll be more or less like a mild to severe cold. I'll be somewhat uncomfortable for a day or two. And during that time, I should spend that alone so I don't accidentally give it to anyone else. But for the most part, just, drink some water, eat some food, and try not to overexert yourself. I am not comfortable giving my medical information to someone who works in HR. I don't think that is appropriate. I don't think that's necessary. I have always found it a little uncomfortable that anytime you start a job, they say we need to scan a copy of your driver's license and your Social Security number. They're like your little, you know what I mean, the card. But I've always found that really weird. Like, you look at it, get the information off of it that you need, and certainly there's some kind of software that can safely store that information internally without you needing physical access to that information. I have known a lot of people in HR, and they are not the people that I want to have just virtually free access to the information they already have. I already do not like that. And not to say anything about the people who work in HR where I'm at now. As best I can tell, they're great. People that have worked in HR in places that I've worked before, yeah, that's going to be a no for me, dog. So, what happens? Southwest reverses their position, things start to look more like normal, and we get our cheap air flights back in one of the most popular common carriers. Or they do nothing and crumble, very unlikely. Or the third option, in my personal favorite. Well, it's actually horrifying, but It's the one that would certainly be the most interesting. It's the one that is history book making, so to speak. We've already talked about the National Guard coming in and filling in roles in hospitals when the nurses were laid off from the vaccine mandates. This has already been widely discussed. And there's people all over that are in favor of this. They like this idea. Why stop there? Right? I mean, why stop at the hospitals? That is just one small aspect that a small subset of members of the National Guard are able to fulfill. But certainly, the National Guard is a massive entity. I'm certain they have experts in logistics involved. Literally, like every week, you can go out for a drive and you'll see a whole row of, military sort of vehicles, people carriers, supply carriers, Humvees, all sorts of things packed with all sorts of goodies. You don't think that there's people involved in organizing and planning these transports, like making sure that these routes are considered secure, having, coordinating when groups will arrive at a certain location, and all sorts of other shit about logistics I don't understand at all because that's not my job. But it's their job. And that's my point. Wow, I am really on a roll today. Jeez. No, it's never going to stop. And this Southwest thing, this is going to be another proving ground, so to speak. And we're just going to see a lot of National Guard members filling in all over the place. You know what? I think I am going to do a long one today because this kind of ties into another thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently. So, I don't know. You can call this a bonus episode tied on to the end. Thanks for listening up to this far. We are obsessed with criminals in our culture. And by that, I mean I am personally obsessed with criminals of our culture. And if you think I'm wrong, give me 5 facts about Billy the Kid. Tell me 10 things about Al Capone. What about, what was that guy's name? John Dillinger. Babyface. We literally have an entire genre of music called gangster rap. And it is massive. Some of the Jay-Z is like the largest superstar probably of all time. Followed by like guys like Kevin Gates and Young Jeezy. We have music just to glorify criminals. We have mobster movies. Again, like Scarface, The Godfather, The Sopranos, which I am currently rewatching, by the way. But so yes, I personally fall into the subset of people that find this interesting, and obviously these movies and films and music, it's not made specifically for me, but in a culture that is often defined by rebellion, even the foundation of our country was, in fact, defined by a rebellion. That we are a culture that uniquely exalts enemy generals. I mean, now everybody's mind immediately goes to the American Civil War and Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson and Jefferson Davis and how all these statues need to get torn down. And I'm not even going to touch that because I have a lot of different thoughts about that. And I find that my mind is often swayed. I'm sympathetic to both sides, but I think you'd be surprised which side I'm a little more sympathetic to. But look at Tecumseh. Tecumseh fought against America in the War of 1812, and he is lauded. His story is well known, very popular, especially when you start getting into Ohio. Or, I mean, we literally have a statue of Lenin in New York City. Now, if there was anywhere in the country that you could put that statue, it would be New York City. But the fact that it exists is at least a cursory example of what I am talking about, so I am going to sink my claws into it. My point is, there is no other, I can't think of another culture that does this. And it's because we like the idea of people that go up against an authority. For whatever reason, America has always seen itself as David in the David and Goliath story. I mean, that was super, super true during the American Revolution, the War of 1812, and some others. As if to say I can't think of an example. But, and it didn't take us long to basically never be the underdog again. We were considered the largest military superpower in the world after World War II. Even through the Cold War, we managed to maintain this reputation among basically any Western nation. There's something that we like about these rebellious criminals, and it's that they just made a spot for themselves. They looked at either something new that had not been done before, the not technically illegal, which is the best form of legal for criminals, or the flat out illegal, but then that just means there is an open field. We like them because they are awesome. Not because of what they did, but because of what it took to do it. That they looked at what was actually a Goliath and said, I mean, they didn't even go down to the river and pray and find the perfect smooth stones. They didn't do any of that shit, at least not most of them. They just said, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to fight. I'll go for it. Let's see what happens. Some of them, for a time, they made a space for themselves. And, some of them got hanged publicly, shot, were confined to house arrest, and slowly went mad due to syphilis while they went fishing in their swimming pool in their backyard. The criminal never gets away in the story, and yet it doesn't make their stories less awesome. Because, I mean, if they got away, then they'd just be a bad guy. The fact that they don't get away leaves them exalted. It gives them the statue, or makes Billy the Kid a character that shows up in stories over and over again for, in dime novels and just like crappy Charlie Sheen westerns. I mean, for over 100 years, 200 years. I think that we like them because we think that we can take that resolve, that brashness and boldness, and because most of us see ourselves as moral people, we think that if we had that, we would be unrestricted to do something great. And it doesn't have to be great like bootlegging alcohol. It can be something great like saying, I'm not going to give you a copy of that card. Or, I don't need this job. Or, you don't decide what goes in me. I decide what goes in me. And the truth is, it doesn't have to be most of us. In fact, a lot is kind of a malleable term. It wouldn't even necessarily have to be a lot of us. It just has to be enough of us. And the whole system comes crashing down. This is what I was saying about the... have you guys ever heard of the tax strike? And I'm sure I've brought it up on the show before, but just in case I haven't, and you're still listening, you obviously have nothing better to do. The idea of a tax strike is that this system is only... a lot of these laws can't actually be enforced. There's no reasonable way of actually enforcing it. That's why there's people who have smoked weed their whole lives, never gone to jail, and saw it get legalized. Because the only way they can really enforce it is if they already have you in a jam. Same goes for speeding. You ever drive in 95 near DC? Everyone's driving 100 miles an hour. There's no way to stop them. Pulling people over is not going to stop them, and there is going to be more. There is more of us than there are of them. The same goes for taxes, paying taxes. Guess what happens if you don't pay your taxes? Well, a lot of things happen. Your credit can go down. Eventually, it'll be hard to even open a bank account. Depending on how much you owe, you might have your accounts frozen. But what if you didn't have any of that? What if you ran a business that was all cash, all money orders, and you just didn't pay your taxes? Well, if it was just you, you'd be fucked. They'd show up at your house. They'd have guns drawn. It'd be like that farmer that owed $14 million in back taxes. They took his whole farm, showed up at his house with tanks. That would be what would happen if it was just you. But what if it was literally everyone? And I don't just mean all your businesses. I mean I don't mean all of Coca-Cola and Apple. I'm talking about Joe's sandwiches and Mamma Mia's pizzas. I'm talking about corner stores, and every citizen was like, you know what? I'm not returning the form. What are they going to do? Literally, what are they going to do? Now, you could say to me, well, Vince, a lot of this stuff's automated. They'd click one button on a keyboard and you'd have no more access to your account. Okay, well, what if I dumped all my accounts and just had cash? Only ever accepted cash. I think even check cashing places look at your ID now, though. So I feel like, you'd have to work that out with your boss on how you were going to get paid. Like old school, in an envelope on Wednesdays. But no, what about that? Because even if that were true, and it would just be a matter of striking a few keys and putting a red flag on your social security number or whatever, and now you can't access any of your digital money, you think they can do that to everyone? You think that if, again, not most, not even a lot, just enough, that there were 20 or 30% of people walking around the country, they have no access to anything, They can't buy food. They can't put gas in their car. They can't pay their electric bill or their mortgage. They can't get to work. They can't stock the shelves at the grocery store. They can't make your coffee. They can't clean your house. They can't fix your car. No, they can't. They cannot direct the planes or fly them or refuel them. No, nothing. No, it would lead to societal collapse. The only thing keeping it afloat is faith that enough people will comply, as opposed to enough people not complying. Which is how weed, by the way, that's how weed got legalized. Survey after survey for 2012, 2013, 2014, 60% of adults have smoked weed. And yeah, and then eventually it was just like, well, shit. Then I guess we just have to legalize it because at this point, so many people smoke, we can just arrest whoever we want at any time. And actually, that situation was really advantageous for them. I don't know why they gave that up other than for the political points of being the one to legalize it, which, by the way, slam dunk. But they have all these controls built into the system already. And actually, now that we're talking about legalizing weed, this isn't yet another, we're just going to keep this going. I haven't done an hour-long episode in a while, so let's see if we can do it. No, so when they were looking at legalizing weed recreationally in Colorado, the very first thing that happened was the federal government came in and said, we are not going to fund your highway department if you legalize weed. Why? We're not going to fund your highways so that you can have people getting high and driving down the way. So we're not going to give you money to fix the roads or expand your infrastructure because we're not going to give you money for that. Why did they do that? Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Yes, that is correct. They lobbied against legalizing weed in Colorado, and they threatened to use the highway fund for it. This is their trick bag is actually not a bag of trick. It is a small purse, and it only has one trick, and it is this. And it's that they lobby the federal government or state governments to rescind funds for the highway if they don't get the policies that they are lobbying for. And they did not want they did not want they did not want Colorado to be able to legalize weed. They used the federal government to come in and say, we're not going to all that tax money we steal from your citizens, we're not giving it back to you to do your highways. And Colorado said, why would we care? Weed grows in the ground and we will be a mecca on the planet for this shit. We'll fund our own highways. Thanks. And then they did it. And now, I'm not going to gloss over this and just say victory was achieved overnight, because there were years of problems of dispensaries and growers only being able to accept cash and money orders, and they had no way of changing this or putting it in the bank. Many of these dispensaries ended up looking like safe houses. Imagine that. Somebody in there 24/7, armed guards, bulletproof glass and doors, because these buildings had literally hundreds of thousands of dollars cash because they couldn't do anything else with it. You wonder why it's always funny going somewhere where it's legal for the first time, especially with somebody who hasn't been to a place like that before, because they look around and they say, oh my God, there's more dispensaries than there are Starbucks. And there's already a lot of Starbucks. And why do you think that happens? When you can only buy things in cash and you can't save any of it? Yeah, they expand their infrastructure. Actually, and now that things are the other way, it probably worked out. Now, I say that there were also a lot of companies that got robbed and went bankrupt, or people died, or otherwise the owners just got addicted to heroin and died. And I know of people that happened to also. So yeah, it's a messed up system when the government starts playing with people's money. Lives literally hang in the balance. And this is basically the federal government's trick with whatever they want to do. It's the same thing with the income tax, the federal income tax that comes out of your check before you even get it. Now, this here is the most disgusting thing about our tax policy. And before I point out why this is so disgusting, I need to explain something. You are taxed every time you spend money. The person selling the thing to you or service also pays taxes on the money they receive from you. So you pay a tax for buying it and they pay a tax for selling it. That makes no sense. You pay a tax on any property that you hold. If you buy something that may appreciate in value, something considered to be a hard asset, or even something that depreciates in value, like a car, you have to pay a property tax on that. Depending on the item, you may also have a licensing tax, say on your vehicle or on a business, depending on the kind of business. If you die and you try and give those things, all those things that you've already paid taxes on, from buying, from selling to owning, you've paid all these taxes, and now your children pay a tax for inheriting it. Pretty disgusting. But it's all not quite as disgusting as getting taxed on the money from your job, and I'll tell you why. One, it is totally involuntary. I make the decision when I want to sell something. I make the decision when I want to buy something. And I make the decision when I want to pass something on to my family. Though, do you really make the decision? I mean, what else are you supposed to do with it? You can't get buried with it. I mean, you could. It'd be kind of weird. Probably dig up your grave. Then I wouldn't have to pay taxes on that because I would be a criminal. But that income tax, you really don't have a choice about working. You must do something. I mean, you could do nothing. That would be awful. But, if you want to be comfortable, you need to do something. And this is where it gets tricky. Because, again, you're not paid in cash in an envelope on Wednesday anymore. No, you are paid with a check that very likely says Bank of America or Wells Fargo or any of these other massive financial institutions. And, obviously, plus the name of your company, but I mean, they don't keep cash. They keep all of their cash at Bank of America or Wells Fargo. No. So you don't actually get money. You get numbers on a piece of paper with the name of a financial institution. And the funny thing is, there's a big number at the top and a smaller number at the bottom. That big number at the top is what you're supposed to be paid. Now, again, this is one of those inside-outside games because you're paying an income tax and they're paying a payroll tax. So they get taxed for giving you money and you get taxed for receiving it. Again, disgusting. But you don't even have the option. You don't get to write that off. There's nothing about it that's voluntary. That is taken out of your check before you even get it. Then you take that check to Bank of America or your local credit union. You go down and then you, quote unquote, cash the check, though, like many Americans, you probably don't actually take cash. You just leave it in the account. You've actually never even seen the money. You literally never see the money. If you're the kind of person who pays your bills with a card or online and you do your shopping with a debit card, you literally never see the money that you work for. And the government still has gotten every bit of their cut of those taxes. Now, the income tax, initially, the idea was you paid a percentage of your income. And as that number got higher and higher and higher, They said, well, wait. There's nobody could pay this by the end of the year, a whole year, and we're supposed to take 30% of their money. They'll never save it. How are we supposed to collect it? And they say, oh, no, we'll just steal it from them before they get it. And so they take it right out of your check. And if they take too much, we're sorry, you worked a lot of overtime just in weird spurts. So we took a bunch extra because we thought you were going to make more. We're sorry, you can have it back at 0% interest. And people celebrate it. Like they do literal TV commercials about what you're going to do with your income tax. Down payment on a car, like, you can use it to, this tax season, go get yourself a new Wave Runner. I know Wave Runner doesn't really do commercials. They're just a really exciting product. If you don't pay your taxes, and when I say you, I mean only you, the government will come for you. They will make it impossible for you to live. And if you find a way to continue earning, such as the farmer, eventually men with guns and tanks and helicopters will show up and they will find a way to bleed you for that money, even if it means taking your family farm. If enough of us refused to pay those taxes, and again, this would take some serious coordination with your employers. We'd have to see a massive uprising, an upswell from all over the nation. Then there would not be enough men or guns or helicopters or tanks to collect on that debt. And to make it even sweeter, the guns, helicopters, men, and tanks are also things that require money the government would not have if they were unable to steal it from you. So when you hear rhetoric about people supporting their own oppression, being complicit in their own oppression, no matter how you feel about many of these social issues, I would like you to consider that all of us together get to share in one oppressed group, which is anybody who pays taxes. Man, I hate taxes. I saw a really funny joke a couple weeks ago, and it said the reason they call it gross pay is because it's disgusting to see how much you would have made before taxes. Okay, so I work a lot of overtime at my job, right? And I got a stimulus last year. I wasn't working. I was making a podcast. And I was doing stand-up comedy and making straight A's in school so I could graduate. But I love me. I love this show. No, so if you sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. I got a stimulus check, right? $1,200. Pretty sweet, not gonna lie. It was a time when, you're scraping by, mom and dad helping you out. You got a little money saved up because you were a hotshot car salesman who, broke his nose and had to go back to school. And yeah, I mean, that's great. That's awesome. $1,200, Got a skateboard, spent some time outside with my boys. We were riding around. We were having a fun time. It was like the summer that never ended. Well, until it did. Now I have a child. It's beautiful. I still have the skateboard too, so it's true. You can have it all. And look, and here I am doing a podcast and sometimes stand-up comedy. Really, you can have it all. I get taxed $1,200 on some 2-week checks. like, yeah, if you work a ton of overtime, and I mean a lot, I work on the road, so I'm not really ever in a hurry to rush back to a hotel at night. No, I'm working a lot of hours on some of these jobs. And yeah, I literally had at least one, because I remember the first time I saw it and I said, I'm never going to look at that line on this pay stub again. Because that one check, I paid back my stimulus to the federal government and they stole it from me. I didn't ask for the stimulus. I don't ask for my taxes to be taken out either. If the stimulus was something that needed to be applied for, rest assured, I wouldn't have done it because I really didn't need it and I thought it was dumb. But yeah, now at this point, I saw that thing. Oh, they're looking at doing another $1,200 stimulus. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, well, I hate to be such a sourpuss because, it sounds like now now I'm in a situation where I definitely don't need it. And so that's why I don't want it. The truth is, I really didn't want it the first go around. I actually felt pretty bad. I remember my parents asking me if I got one, and I said yeah, and I felt ashamed. I felt ashamed that I got it. But what are you going to do? It's money. I, can afford to hang out with my friends, do some fun things, put gas in my car, put brakes on my car, put a new headlight on my car, change the wheel locks on my car. Yeah. So, most of that money just went into my car. But yeah, the stimulus, I don't need a stimulus. You know how my bank account can be stimulated? Not having the fucking payroll or the income tax taken out of it. In fact, if they want to abolish the payroll tax too, then maybe I could work out a thing with my boss where he only pays me 50% of whatever that number was, and then he can just keep the rest. So at the end of the day, he's still saving money, and then I'm making more money. That would actually be really cool. I would really like that. I would pay a toll for every road I drove on if that could happen. I would pay Walmart or Amazon or whoever was privately sponsoring the roads to not have that income tax taken out. I would like that. I saved for myself for retirement, so that Social Security, I could just put that over there. Probably gets a better return off of that money. I'm sure it does. I mean, considering the government won't even give you interest for a year on the income tax they steal from you, I don't see any reason why I would believe Social Security is somehow going to be like a huge benefit if it exists by the time I retire. No. I just want to be free. And yeah, I totally got off track earlier. Yeah. New Hampshire, they have what's called the Free State Project. They're talking about abolishing income tax. Now, I mean, the Free State Project is a relatively small group currently. The idea that they end up like controlling the political hierarchy of the entire state of New Hampshire. Smart money's on no right now as of October 12th, 2021. But, things change and, they happen gradually, then suddenly. So some of you will get the joke that I just made. But yeah, so who knows? They abolished income tax, and then what? After that, no income tax? The amount of money I would save, I would just buy property in New Hampshire and then use, be a New Hampshire citizen, not have income tax collected, and then use that money to pay the note on the property, thus perpetuating my status as a New Hampshire citizen. I've already cracked the code. This is the best tax loophole that doesn't even exist yet. What would you do with that if you didn't even if you only make like a few $100 a week, and plenty of people do. And I mean, I'm not going to lie, it's not, you're not putting on the Ritz or anything, but I mean, you can still have fun with a few $100. In fact, find you might actually have more fun when you're only making a few $100. Not if you have kids though. Then you're just going to be stressed a lot. So, like I said, it all has to do with the context. That being said, whatever amount of taxes you pay on your 2-week check, be it $100 or $200, be it like $800 or $1,000, no matter how much money you make, can you imagine how different your life would be if that was just your money? Like, if now again, no disrespect, even if you don't make a lot of money, that very well could be enough to pay to take some online classes, or enough that you're able to save and take a slight pay cut while you apprentice in a new career, or just try out something different like your arts and crafts business or your supplies for your at-home daycare center. Whatever it is, even just a little bit of money. Or it might be just enough money that now, instead of working 50 hours a week to pay your rent, now you only have to work 40 hours a week. So now you reasonably have the time to commit to, again, school, at-home daycare, whatever your thing is, whatever your path is that is going to make you happy, so that you can work and be efficient enough to make the money you need to break free. And I don't mean break free as in like you make $1 billion and now you never have to work again. I mean break free as in like you're not stressed and you're doing a job that you enjoy well enough that you don't feel like you're working yourself to death. Because if you hate what you do, it doesn't matter how hard or how long you work. You are working yourself to death if you hate it, because it will kill you. So, like, if I didn't have an income tax, I wouldn't be putting so much money into my car. I really like my car. And if I wanted one that didn't require so much maintenance, I'm sure I could find one. Not that I've tried. But my point being is that for many people, that would be enough to, God, if I made $300 a week and I had this car, I couldn't afford to drive it. It would have been parked last time it needed work. It would have been parked forever. And that would have been it. I would have been catching rides to work until I could afford to replace it. I could sell it for a few $100 and then take my saved money and go buy another car that needs a bunch of work on it. Or you could not have an income tax, and over the course of a month, who knows? That might be enough for a lease on a Sentra. Or, I mean, again, I'm not putting you on. Like, I'm not trying to say that it's the most glamorous lifestyle, but as a previous car salesman, I've said this to probably 100 or more people, having a reliable car will change your life for the better. And that's a little bit cynical to preface that by saying that this is what car salesmen say. The truth is, as long as that payment's not burying you, yeah, it will make your life better. You'll be more reliable. You'll be better rested. You will not have weird random things that make you 20, 30, 40 minutes late for work. Your boss will look at you differently. Other employers, when they ask your boss, hey, was so-and-so a good employee? They'll say, oh yeah, they were great. They always showed up on time, in a great mood, because they were never pissed about the fact that their driveway had leaky oil all over it. Again, it's literally, that money is literally like, I've taken a long time to make a pretty basic point, and that no, money can't buy you happiness, but money can be life-changing. In fact, it often is life-changing. Any amount of money that is a continual stream is life-changing, and that goes in both directions. You lose it, it might change your life. it will change for the worse in some ways, or maybe you have one of those like St. Francis moments where, like, through loss you find that it's the wanting, and then you find that you actually don't need all these things, and you're better off with a simple life, and that may happen to you, or maybe $300-400 every couple weeks is enough to change your life. You're no longer worried about diapers and formula and having a reliable car that you can barely afford, but means that your daughter gets to and from school safely. No, all of that's gone. Just that few $100s means that car and that formula, all that's paid for. It's all done. All those stresses are gone. The rest of that money, that car money, is no longer cutting out of that funds, which means maybe now you can go down to the beach. Maybe now you can afford to pay Walmart or Amazon the new tolls on your privatized roads. I keep saying this like in jest, but I mean, but what's funny is, like, we really don't know how terrible that experiment may go. I don't know. To wrap this up, there's just one thing that I want to just point out. Suggesting that income tax is theft and that we should go on strike and coordinate with our employers to not pay it that is a really good example of an extreme point of view. In fact, that is great. Yeah, that's the perfect example of something that's considered extreme based off of our current political and social climate. And that's a completely fair thing to call it. I'm not even, this isn't me saying, well, but no, none of that. I totally agree. That is probably that is in a small basket of extreme opinions that I definitely subscribe to. Now, alternatively, suggesting that you shouldn't be forced to get a vaccine, that it is totally reasonable to have a healthy amount of skepticism about the efficacy of these vaccines, to suggest that we should maintain the standard of employers not forcing their employees to get vaccinated, that is not an extreme opinion. That's actually, like, pretty fucking normal. Like, to me, a lot of this thing about, like, right-wing extremists. Now, if all these people are running around saying that we're all not going to pay income tax, then yeah, that's pretty fucking extreme. But to run around saying we think that critical race theory should stay out of schools, or we don't like integrated bathrooms, and I don't, oh shit, that's going out of context, huh? No, to say that we think that boys and girls should have separate bathrooms and locker rooms, and we think that teaching certain aspects about white oppressors and black victims beyond the point of just, like, what is just a normally culturally accepted phenomenon, to suggest that things are pretty okay and going about so aggressively changing them is wrong. How is that an extreme opinion? And I mean that literally. I like to address it literally. That, and I'm not trying to straw man. I'm doing my best to frame this argument fairly. And I'm open to this, to some reframing, restructuring within reason. If you in good faith think that I've framed something incorrectly, I would like you to show me how. I think we've gotten a lot of these things pretty much correct in many ways. Certainly not always. There are certainly a lot of ways where things have been glossed over, largely ignored. In these ways, I can see that there's a bit of room to change. Okay, sorry. Here we go. The actual framing. There's definitely room for improvement, but for the most part, we've done a pretty good, fair, and equitable job in how we teach our kids. We think that boys and girls should have separate bathrooms, and people who are having a tough time on their personal identity are in a great environment in high school to explore some of those things, while also seeing that there are reasonable amounts of friction to lots of different ideas, especially ideas as it comes to self perception. If you tell somebody, I'm going to be a great skateboarder, you're going to have to show them or you're going to catch some shit. The same thing when it comes to vaccine mandates. I think that telling the public school system saying that you need these vaccines to come to school, these tried and true vaccines that make you virtually impossible to get measles, mumps, or rubella. It would be kind of absurd if we had a breakout of these at a time when everybody's vaccinated with effective vaccines against them. But adding to the battery untested products, new technology that we don't understand and we have no idea what the long-term effects are, should stay out of the workplace and should stay out of public schools until we have a better idea of what that does. That goes for the COVID vaccine. That also goes for the HPV vaccine. That's still a relatively new technology with we're just now starting to understand what some of these long-term side effects are. If you're just in general in the camp of we've basically got it right now, right now as in about 1.5 to 2 years ago, and you're in the camp of our system is inherently deeply flawed and in need of immediate and radical change from the top down, which of those opinions sounds extreme? We more or less wish to conserve what we've got going on versus we more or less wish to start over with a better foundation. These are the two opinions, and I'm trying to boil them down as simply as possible. We wish to conserve most of what we have here. We wish to start over, but better with most of what we have here. Now, when you put it that simply, neither of them sound totally extreme. But I'm just asking, which one sounds more extreme? And then asking beyond that, which is the one claiming that the other is extreme? Like, when I say which is the one claiming the other, I mean when you look at the massive media apparatus. All right, well, I'll leave it there. Yeah, that was pretty good. 1:05. It's been a while. Thanks for listening.